try that. Okay, hi.
Hi.
Hi, sorry about
Hi.
that. Hi.
We were practicing
What the sound? Zombies, it was. It was zombies. Blame the
We were
zombies.
practicing. I thought we were mimes. Mime zombies.
Mime zombies?
Mime
I'm
zombies.
actually not sure that it's still...
No? Maybe?
It should be, but...
I see it over there on
No.
OBS.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe I just need to crank it up.
Oh, I
Crank
think
it
I'm
up. Is it
hearing
raining? Yeah.
Static? They're probably hearing the AC.
No, it's rain.
It's raining.
Much static. Really? Really? Oh, for cripe's sake. Rain? Wow. Well, it's rain in the thing with the stuff. Alright, it's rain,
William.
not static.
Thank you, William, for the donation. Just a quick hello. Gotta finish watching last week's awesome Leviathan episode and get some sleep before this week's episode. Go the fuck to sleep.
Can you guys hear us alright now? Should
Background
be
track
able
is
to.
loud.
Alright, I can turn that down. That's easy enough. Ta-da! I can turn that down a little. Ta-da! Those are...
Oh, the creature grumbles in the rain are from, 100% raining.
Huh?
Those are the Siren Saint sounds.
Well, yeah.
The background is weird. Do you want me to find a new background?
Oh, background audio?
Yeah,
Nah, it's fine.
it's cool. We're gonna be in Jurassic Park. You
Turn
guys
right.
Get to enjoy the
I
Jurassic
mean, we
Park.
can if you want, but
That's cool.
I like
Cool.
jungle. Today's episode is going to be on audio effects in your games.
Yeah, I'm very.
We actually could do an entire episode on that.
Very true. And whether or not they're like, and there's.
We would have to get Strix, though.
Oh, we would. I am mostly good at strange animal noises. William TW donated another $5. Also, happy holiday at work, I guess.
Thank you, William. Hey, Super Chai Latte.
Chai lattes are delicious, but also I'm glad you're enjoying Leviathan. Are you on episode 3 of season 1? Because yes, it is much. I am glad you are enjoying it. I would say if you like catching up on YouTube is totally an option. You can also normally jump in live. We're still pretty early in the season 3, so like yes, spoilers, but also it's fairly accessible story wise.
Yeah, and I feel like there aren't too many spoilers, right? I mean,
No, it's
not
like,
a mystery.
It's not like some great like, oh my gosh, what's happening? I'm less into the tension of mystery and more into the tension of like who or what is going to get hurt in this given instance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think and that's an interesting conversation about like different ways to create tension in shows. And the way tension is made in shows is often very different than Sorry, I'm now on a tangent that I like find interesting because like there's that concept of like in a TV show where you have like expectations in a TV show, right? Where you think about like, oh, I'm watching this type of show, therefore this sort of thing is going to happen, and therefore like tension is a weird thing because sometimes it comes from like subverting those expectations, and sometimes but then people get pissed off or don't like it because often that breaks the genre.
Or if you don't do it well enough, then it's too predictable. Yeah.
And RPGs are interesting because you're not the only one making the story. There is but there is a tension inherent in it because I don't actually have full control over the situation. Like, a character might do something against their best interests that is not written into the story, which is always an interesting. I see that you brought snickerdoodles.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to take a moment and eat this cookie. I love how fluffy your snickerdoodles are.
This batch came out a little weird.
Yeah.
Because I'm modifying the recipe a little bit. Because I kept having to add flour. After making the recipe, I'm like, this is way too fluid. Mm-hmm. It needs to be thicker. So I kept adding more flour. And finally I'm like, okay, I just need to rewrite the recipe to include more flour. And then I think I overdid it with this one. There's too much flour. So, bye, Willie. So they ended up too big. So some of them didn't cook right at the top.
Oh. Interesting.
And quite enough. Like, you can see it in that one, it kind of settled back down a little bit. And they're still, like, they're cooked enough that they're fine to eat, but they're not quite there. Not quite there. It's fine. It's fine.
It's good though. They're very fluffy.
So anyway. So once again, happy, now belated 2-year streamiversary.
Thank you for joining. No, you're fine. Thank you for joining me yesterday. I have a bowl full of cookie dough in my fridge, and it's real dangerous.
Yay.
I sent cookies home to people yesterday.
Awesome.
This is like, I can't
No.
have a bowl of cookie dough and a batch of cookies for me and Steph.
This is why I constantly bring baked goods
Yeah,
here.
no, it's very
And it
smart.
works out really well because everybody is happy. I get to make people happy, especially my cast members. Like, it's a good thing to do, right? And I get to keep baking, and I continually have baked goods of my own, so...
And you have like a reasonable amount of baked goods.
Yeah.
As opposed to what I will now have, which is an unreasonable amount.
Yeah. Like, after I brought you those scones, the scones, yesterday, I went home and I was like, we need more scones. Because I thought 12 would be way more than Allie and I could eat, but they're actually really good, so we're each eating at least one a day, so... And then yesterday we each had 2, so then it's like, alright, we're good.
I've learned that biscuits in my house do not last. The quantity of biscuits that Steph consumes is impressive. And I mean American biscuits, not British biscuits. The savory kind. But yes. No, I remember when I lived in a co-op with 10 people, like baking a batch of 24 cookies was a very reasonable number of cookies to make. They would last maybe 2 days. And when I started living in smaller and smaller places and started noticing that batches of cookies became dangerous, or it was like, oh, now when you divide 24 by 6, or 4, that's 6 cookies each. Oh no, that's a lot of cookies each. As opposed to by 10, it's like 1.5 or like 2.5 cookies each. So, and now I live with one other person, and I'm like, 24 cookies is too many cookies for 2 people.
Which is why you share.
Yeah, yeah.
Because then you get to make people happy. Unexpected cookies.
That's true. That's true. So anyway, sugar cookies, yes, they are closer to biscuits, and you do normally typically put frosting on them. I forget that you're in America right now, Michael Pork. It depends. I feel like I always frosted our sugar cookies, like icing.
We never did when I was a kid. But we didn't make sugar cookies all that often.
We would do them for like Christmas because we would do like the shaped ones.
I feel like now it's a lot more. It's a lot easier because you can just like buy the like you can buy the batter and you can buy the frosting. Whereas like back then, for frosting sugar cookies, I think you had to make it.
We did. I mean, we would make it, and it was always icing. It was just icing sugar and water, and you just mix those to the right consistency, and then slap it on your cookies. And then if you're feeling fancy, you would mix in food coloring, and then you decorate them.
We usually made either peanut butter cookies, which I've really been wanting lately, can't have, or snickerdoodles or chocolate chip, but that's not sugar cookie. This is actually a sugar cookie. Snickerdoodles are sugar cookies, and then before you bake them, you roll them in cinnamon and sugar. So there you go. Bentham, what are you doing in the U.S.? Run!
He's touring theme parks.
All right, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's legit.
So, hi everybody. Welcome to GeekSpaceTV. If you're new here, we talk about baked goods a lot. But sometimes we don't, and we talk about other things, like this show. It's called Behind the Screens, and it's not just because you're watching us eat cookies and talk about things. It's because, typically on the show, we talk about how to play and run tabletop RPGs, and we've been working on, specifically, the basic concept is myself teaching Anna to run I'm like, coffee burps.
Because it's a great t-shirt.
That's Wonderful.
I'm-
You're wearing the same t-shirt.
I never wear this outside of the house. This is an original Critical Role shirt, like the first run of shirts they did. And the kicker is I didn't buy it for me.
Really?
There was one shirt left, and I'm like, well, I guess I'll like buy it, and then maybe we can do a giveaway. And I bought it, and I'm like, nobody is going to want a size small. Like, how are we going to do a giveaway? Only enter if you want a size small. Like, that's not going to work. I'll just keep it. So, but I never wear it out of the house because it's unisex. And I hate unisex shirts. But it's super comfy, so I wear it at home all the time.
That's fair. That's the downside.
But it was part of the saga of me getting here today. Check my Twitter if you're curious.
You are truly a bard with probably more than one level of rogue.
Yeah, probably. Probably 2. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say like at least 3. I think you've got one of those rogue schools. Like 3rd level is when you start
Alright.
getting all that stuff.
But what overall level am I? I mean, because that's the real.
Oh, that's true. Like percentage wise, like ratio wise, I feel like you're a 70-30 bard rogue.
All right, that's fair.
So if you were a level 10 character, you'd have 3 levels in rogue and 7 levels in bard.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. I think it's at least 80-20, but
Okay.
but you know, whatever. It's fine.
Yeah, we can
It's
quibble
fine.
over the last 10%.
Right?
Yeah.
Because there's so much overlap of abilities, really. It's fine. Anyway. Yes, unisex. Potato sack cut. Yeah. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Behind the screens.
Behind the screens, and there was a saga. Yes, it will be sung in taverns throughout the land. It will be sung in taverns throughout the land. So behind the screens is us talking about playing RPGs, and we were originally working on a D&D show. That was sort of the plan, but that Anna had come up with, and it was very exciting. It was based on Rat Queens, but then shit happened, and shit hit the fan at the studio,
I mean,
more than once.
continually.
And it turns out that being the CEO of a company and also trying to plan an RPG show is complicated.
Yeah.
So the D&D show, as you have noticed, has not happened, and instead we have another wonderful D&D show on this channel called Aloft, which is in partnership with a group called Brave Monday. So where we are at right now behind the screens is that currently we're going to take the show on a break hiatus. I don't really know what the difference between those is. I guess a hiatus is when you're like, we don't know when we're coming back, and so I suppose we're like not 100% sure.
Yeah, I mean, they're very similar. Like,
Yeah.
it's going on break, but the point is that it's coming back with either a break or a hiatus. The plan is to bring it back.
The goal is to line it up with when we will be starting up the actual show that you will be running.
So I think there's a lot of other stuff to talk about between those points.
I know.
Like the fact that for me at least, part of the reason to it makes sense to do the hiatus is
Hybreakus.
we are a Hybreakus. Sure. Oh hey, you know what I need to do, host? One of the main reasons is
Hybreakus also
to-
just sounds like a plant.
to be entirely blunt, I can't keep working the amount that I'm working. I can't keep doing all of this work. Hey, no, I don't want to hear myself. I don't want to hear myself. Anyway, I hate hearing myself. Anyway, I can't keep doing all of this behind the scenes work myself. On top of, I got Chokada cookie.
It's okay, I can't type the word host, so we're doing great here.
I'm working myself to death, basically. And that needs to slow down, not speed up. And doing an RPG show of any type for me right now is off the table. However, I really want to get this studio to the point that it is a reasonable thing as soon as possible. But more imminently, like, I have to stop doing all of the jobs at the studio that are not in front of the camera. And that's where I'm at right now, where with the exception of some tweets and some exports from Marcus and a little bit of help on shipping stuff from Claudia, I'm pretty much doing all the behind-the-scenes stuff. Credit credit should be given to the GMs for organizing their own shows for the most part, but I'm
There's still
like,
a lot that you're doing.
Yeah.
You're allowed
I don't
to say
I don't
that.
want to downplay the amount that you all do too, though. That's what I'm trying to say. To that end, we're planning on doing we're going back to our roots, how we were going to fund the channel initially, and quite possibly doing a Seed and Spark campaign starting around mid-August is the plan. So right around when we'll have been doing this for a year, we're planning on launching an actual crowdfunding campaign to help bring on more people full-time. Or full-time, like 25, 30 hours.
More people with compensation for the time that they're working.
Exactly.
So you aren't doing 5 people's jobs, you're doing 1 person's job.
Yeah, we are quite possibly going to be looking for somebody to grow into a technical director role, and hopefully hiring Marcus to do social media or to do our social media stuff as slightly more full-time, and then ensuring that I am not that my pay isn't based on whether or not I'm running the board for a show, because right now it's kind of wrapped up in that just because of the way I built things, and I need somebody else to be able to run the board and still not starve. So yeah, so we'll be looking at how to make that happen. Sounds like eating noises and it's weird. All right, I will turn it down even more. It's fine. At least
this
here,
camera
Lauren's hair
is
looks
better
fine.
at color than the C920s.
Yeah.
2s. Whichever one. You have the
922s.
922s,
Yeah.
yeah. Pretty much better
So-
than any of the Logitech webcams. Because this is a really
Yeah.
good camera.
So to recap, Behind the Screens is going on hiatus/break. It will be back probably around September, October-ish.
I think one of the goals is to potentially have it be part of that kind of season 4, year 2.
Yeah. Year 2.
Yeah, essentially.
Because
like,
we're
it
getting
would be
there. We're
coming
almost at year 2.
as a portion of that as the shows for this season wrap up, and kind of looking at what year 2 is basically going to be from a more planned perspective, I guess, with some intention of like, here's how our shows are going to work, how they're going to fit together, and things like that.
Yeah. So to that end, yeah, we're going to be taking a break from this show for a little bit, but it will be back. We're going to have a lot more news to talk about leading up to that potential crowdfunding campaign, leading up to season 2. So yeah. Poetry Batman. That's because we're just getting started on this show. You'll take a deep breath, settle in, maybe grab a snack.
Sounds good.
Yeah. In addition to that, so what other news do we have to go over?
I'm taking the schedule off of Anna's hands. So
Yep.
that's my job now. I like calendars.
Yeah. Yeah. So I am calling her our production and programming manager.
I came up with, instead of manager, princess, because then it's alliteration.
Oh, okay.
We have a
Production
social
programming
media
princess.
maestros, a production
Sure.
programming
Sure. If you
princess.
want to be a princess, you can be a princess. Who am I to judge?
I'm a
Evie,
princess!
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Evie. Is there a dragon in the studio today? No comment.
I had to get here somehow.
No.
Flying is a very efficient and very direct route to get here.
True.
Yeah, but it's not work appropriate to put the fucking princess in my title, so.
But princesses.
But princess is totally work appropriate.
Yep. Right. So,
The alliteration is important. Princess is a title that begins with a P. It could be a prince too. I feel like those things should be gendered.
we'll figure out something that's a P.
Yeah.
That is, because like, it's Maestro for Marcus.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll figure out something.
We're working
We'll
on
do
it.
this. We'll do
Professional
this.
princess.
Yeah. So in addition, I interviewed somebody who's going to come on board to help us do editing work as well. So we're looking to expand what we do in that regard as well, like having some decent. Oh dear, they're just.
Perceptor?
Having some decent promotional videos and recaps, maybe even, and just like being able to produce edited content is kind of a big deal for us. So everyone needs to send Lauren tiaras now. Do I have to find my tiara? It's around here somewhere.
We can wait.
All right.
I'll work on a tiara.
All right, that's fine. So anyway. And then the last big bit of news, if you have our announcements channel muted in Discord, you should not. But if you do, because we everyone for when the shows go live, you can now, we have a separate channel for that now. I made a separate channel to announce when the shows go live, so you can just mute that channel if you want to. But the announcements one, I posted an image and a summary of it earlier this week. We are officially going to have a presence at GeekGirlCon this year.
Super awesome.
I don't know how big of a presence yet. We're still figuring out those details, but we are at the very least going to have a booth at GeekGirlCon this year, which I'm super excited about.
Mm-hmm. So if you guys are going to be in Seattle during GeekGirlCon, or you're like, man, should I come to Seattle at some point to visit? I would recommend coming during GeekGirlCon. But GeekGirlCon, for those of you who don't know, it's a convention in the Seattle area based around essentially promoting diversity and inclusion. Their missions and our missions line up kind of nicely in very sort of similar ways. All of their panels and everything, when they create all of their programming, everything's really focused around how is this going to be fostering a more diverse and inclusive community.
Yay,
So
intersectional feminism.
Yeah, it's a really cool convention. Even when it has had its ups and downs, I have seen many of them.
Yeah.
And it is also relatively small on the scale of conventions. So if you are concerned about large conventions, it's a really good one to come to. Yeah.
It is, unfortunately, it is the same weekend as TwitchCon, but.
Or fortunately, for those of us who are like, man, it's going to be hard to make that decision, and then had it made for me.
Yep, kind of. So I think those are the main goings on to talk about.
So this is Princess of presenting production and programming to public persons promptly and professionally. I like that. I updated the calendar. I told you that yesterday.
Oh, goodness.
I really like scheduling things.
I know, it's great. Because now I don't have to worry about it.
I think once I discovered that, like, Google Calendar was, like, just a thing, and that you could keep different calendars on there, and you could color code it, and you could invite people to things, and you could have recurring events, but then you could edit individual events on as part of the recurring event, I got very excited.
Can we have non-eating Sirenscape? There is no eating in the Sirenscape, Danger Mouse.
There may be crunching noises. I don't know.
It's fine.
I also agree with the statement that we will likely have some sort of meetup for people who are going to be here during GeekGirlCon, or potentially around PAX too, because PAX is also coming up at the beginning of September, end of August. So while we do not have a presence at PAX, many of us will be there, and hopefully on some panels, depending on when we hear back about panel acceptances. I do like calendars. It's on the calendar. Give the one with the Morse code, make them even happier. So today we're gonna kind of, in terms of, we'll do a few, if people have questions, like housekeeping questions about other stuff related to GeekSpaceTV in general, and any of our plans related to this show. One of the reasons why I wanted to do this show is because teaching when you have something to talk about is really helpful, or like teaching when you have examples to work from or things that you can put into practice. And so for me, a lot of it has been like it's been really great to talk about the world building and all of those pieces. So my goal is to come back and be doing this show when there is shows that we can talk about it. What about panels for Geek Girl Con? I will be running a panel with several familiar faces from GeekSpaceTV, with myself, Strix, Sour for Junkie, /Steph, and Claudia /Jackie Josh. We will be running a panel on playing and running narrative RPGs. So, but beyond that, Geek Girl Con, we don't have any official GeekSpaceTV panels. But there are a lot of great ones. No, it's also it's a very I submitted like 4 panels and I think 1 got accepted. Like there's a lot of panels at Geek Girl Con, and they work pretty hard on like what the programming overall is going to look like in terms of how it all kind of fits together. Did you ever find out how much space we have at Geek Girl Con?
I don't know yet.
Well, we'll figure that out later. Yeah, that's. I'm gonna eat the second cookie.
Yeah, cool. Go for it.
I figured it was something I could eat. It's just in front of me.
But it is still my intent. So here's the thing. I'm the kind of person who likes to, I prefer to, while I want to enjoy what I do for a living, I prefer to work to live, not live to work. If I'm not able to enjoy my life, then there's no point in working all the time. And I want very much to continue enjoying what I do, and one of the things that I very, very much want to do, and I think that some of you would like to see, is me GMing a show. So one of my goals is very much to get the studio to a point where that is a feasible thing without it being a super stressful thing for me. And when that happens, it is in fact going to be a Star Trek show. Not only that, it's going to be Starfleet Academy show.
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. So at least that's the tentative plan. I've had some other ideas brewing, and do we want to talk about like year 2 programming at all, or
Sure.
Like do we have behind the screens content to talk about, or
We can.
Oh, okay.
I figured at some point, I had some other things we can talk about. I didn't have like a specific crazy, here's the plan. I also kind of wanted to just open up some Q&A. People have been GMing and have
Dr.
questions.
Vesuvius, thank you. The Minion Hiring Fund, thank you. It's Dr. Vesuvius says, a small donation to the Anna Geeks Minion Hiring Fund. Keep up the great work. Thank you. That is
Minion. Oh my gosh, that's for me.
Yeah. Yes. At some point, yes. Yes, that is. Lauren is one of the people we would like to hire pretty much full-time. I mean, full-time. Right now, full-time is really just part-time, but paying you a reasonable wage. So.
Mostly just.
Yeah.
I also mean as a GM. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
I'm one of your minions.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
No.
But
We're not staff. We're minions.
But I treat my minions well.
You do. You are a very, very good, chaotic, neutral good villain.
Villain? Wait. Aww.
So, can Marcus be his Fiasco character all the time on screen? You have to ask him about that one. Oh, I'm a Minion Plus, or Minion Plus Plus. Oh, sweet, you'll always pick me in the salvage.
Somebody's
Plus,
been
plus.
playing a lot of BattleTech lately.
Yeah. Yes.
So, yeah.
Mastermind. That's a better, not an objectively villainous word. So,
Whatever.
I kind of, I figured
Alright,
in terms
so
of
be it.
behind the screen
Let
stuff.
all laws be agreed.
I love that song.
Anyway, what were you going to say?
I was gonna say, yes, if you guys have GMing questions,
Yeah.
feel free. I didn't have, because a lot of what we were doing was like talking about getting started and then some of the basics of running, and I don't really really want to just sit here and talk for 2 hours, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about some of the ideas we have. We don't have anything set in stone, I think, for season. Basically, the main plan is that the next season / year 2 will be starting end of August, beginning of September, somewhere in the fall. Not a Troll donated $10 Princess Minion /fund. Yeah, not a Troll. I have some guesses about who that could be.
Yeah, me too. Any number of people.
It's so many not a Trolls in this chat.
Oh, yep. No, it wasn't who I thought. But.
Oh, interesting. I wonder if it's who I think. Or if we think it's the same one. Favorite sided die. I have a soft spot for D6s.
I have a soft spot for D20s. I think everyone has a soft spot in the bottom of their foot for D4s. But
Yes. Yeah, it's right about here in the center. Yeah, and like that little meaty place in between the arch and the pad. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know, but D12s are dumb. Aww.
What did D12 ever do to
So,
you?
everybody keeps asking about Leviathan.
And by everyone, you mean Iffy?
Yeah,
is asked
repeatedly.
about
Yeah.
Leviathan
Well, you
times.
know.
So, in terms of this story arc, right now I have a pretty rough plan to wrap up the current story arc and get it to a place where there is enough of a resolution that it should hopefully be satisfying. And I think the main story of this crew will be done at the end of season 3. That's kind of my thought process. I do really enjoy the world that I've built, and it's not really a world that I think it's a world that I would like to come back to at some point. But my current idea is something that may involve a time skip and coming back in a different system at a different time. So I don't currently anticipate a season 4 of Leviathan. If it comes back, I think it would be like a spin-off show, but an entirely new show.
In a couple of seasons.
Yeah.
Like 1 or 2 seasons, yeah. So, and I feel the need to tell people, I warned you about this in the beginning. I said
Shows will end.
3 or 4 seasons, no more of any show,
Yeah.
before taking a substantial break and then potentially coming back to it. And the reason for that is the problem that Critical Role had towards the end, where there was just so much, and I think probably even Corporate Sins to a degree, like, by the end of it, there are
30.
hundreds of episodes to catch up on, or at the very least, like, thousands of hours or whatever. It becomes unwieldy, and nobody wants to jump in at the middle. So,
I think seasons help to some extent with that because they kind of create a nice jumping in point. But I think it genuinely is a huge barrier for entry.
Yeah.
I know it was for me. I have seen a couple of episodes of Critical Role, but I have never sat down to watch it because I was like, one, I barely have time to watch a 4-hour RPG, but I was like, I don't know where to start. Like, I have no idea. There's so much history and so much story. Like, there are 100 episodes in. What do I do?
yeah.
And I think Saltiest Healer points out, like, some of our goals in bringing on board people who can do video editing is that we can do things like that. Like, we can wrap a season and then we can create a short summary video, and that can go up before the next season starts.
But it's also important, yes, that is definitely something we want to do. However, that isn't going to solve the problem at all.
'Cause not everyone will be happy with that.
I'm not going to watch, like, I'm a few episodes, because of my wedding, I'm a few episodes behind on Critical Role right now, and I'm not watching the recaps to get caught up. I want to watch the actual show. But the more the more firm I am about that, the further behind I get. So, but that's the thing, like, and that's how a lot of people fall out, and it will help for some people, but some people like myself are too stubborn to do something. So the barrier is still going to be there. It just makes it a little bit lower. So yeah, and then like we were saying, we can return to that galaxy, that universe again in the future, but there are so many stories. I know this is true for me. I'm almost positive it's just as true for you. There are so many stories that we want to tell.
There's so much you can do with RPGs.
So
really,
much.
like, it really isn't like the beauty of them is that you can run D&D, you can run like the classic high fantasy Dungeons and Dragons setting, or you can be like for example, I think it was Osborne who showed us yesterday. There is an RPG system about playing as plushy toys that belong to a child, and you can't move while the child is watching you. And it's basically Toy Story the RPG.
There was, long before Toy Story, there was The Christmas Toy, or A Christmas Toy, I don't remember which, but it was a Jim Henson movie that was basically that principle of, like, when the kids aren't there, when there aren't people watching, they had a lively little town going on, but as soon as somebody was there, they had to lie still, and it was good stuff. I could totally see that being a fantastically fun RPG.
Only because part of me wants, like, people to get enough into their character that'll be like the child walks in the room and everyone on screen would have to be like just pretending to be a toy for a while.
Oh goodness.
What will take so the goal is potentially coming back to Leviathan, but the story of this crew, the crew of the Batleth, I think will be concluded at the end of this season. That's the goal that I'm working towards. In terms of storytelling, that would be a hilarious LARP. Everyone has to, like, freeze when the kid walks in. Then starting up with something. So what would take the place of Leviathan? Probably one of the many ideas that I have.
Yeah. Or that we jointly have. Yeah.
I think that would be, there will be something, but that would be figuring out. So one of the things we want to look into for the next season is how to balance the shows that we have. So not just, is figuring out kind of how the shows fit together in a broader scheme of our schedule. So if we have Star Trek Academy, as much as I also like shows that are based around young adults and teenagers, we probably don't need or want more than one of those. And so what's something that gives us a different tone? I think part of what, like, is great about having EPK and about having Leviathan is that they both fit here, but they're also different. Like, Leviathan has just a difference, and some of it's just a different style, but the settings are different, the way the stories progress, the types of characters that we have. For me, the focus was, and one of the things I wanted to go into was reacting to what I had been running in Shadowrun, where you don't have stories about heroes, because that's not how that world works. Is I was like, fuck it, we're telling stories about heroes. We're not the crew of the Firefly, we're big damn heroes. Unlike them, when they pretend they're big damn heroes, but actually they're just kind of mercenaries. And then somehow they get caught up in being big damn heroes. So I wanted to lean more heavily into, like, that Mass Effect trope of, like, we are saving the fucking galaxy. And no, it's the difference between not grimdark, but the kind of that more, like, space western as opposed to space opera. And that's why I said space opera, because, like, we're saving the galaxy. I am Commander Shepard. We are the crew of the Normandy, as opposed to we are a ragtag crew of misfits. Which is what they ended up being, but they all still committed to the part where they wanted to be heroes, and that's all I asked for. I was like, you guys need to be heroes, and that's what I want. So having kind of the difference between the more anti-heroes of Eat, Pray, Kill, where, like, they're maybe doing good, or maybe just doing good for themselves. It's questionable, as opposed to something else. So that, I think, is thinking about how our shows all fit together, and so what I would decide to do, which idea we would pick, would kind of be in conjunction with the other things that are happening. And I think there's a good chance that EPK will be coming back, but I don't want to speak for Steph on that one.
I'm not sure that Steph knows yet.
I don't know if she does either. I think it might depend on the Strix.
Well,
and more people as well.
I don't know if she wants me to say this, but I'm going to anyway. Strix has said she will come back for no more than 2 shows. Which means I could probably get at least 3 out of her.
Yeah. Maybe
No,
not 3 all the time, but like every so often.
But yeah, yeah. So we'll see. But that also lends itself well to, like, I really want to expand our overall content, which is another part of the reason we're going to try and do a crowdfunding campaign again. Really want to expand our content beyond just having a couple, 2 or 3 RPG shows. Like, we really want to get an art show going on with Steph, and that might actually somewhat replace this for now, where I'm going to push to get that started up so that we still have another show going on. We want to do, like, there's so many show ideas, especially now with Lauren coming on as our production and programming princess. Pro temp. Anyway, that's your tiara?
This is my tiara. Right. They're antlers. I've got antlers now.
So now we have almost twice the ideas for shows that we had before.
Also, I am not the only person with ideas for shows, so...
Yeah. So we want to expand our content range, not just our content, but our content range, what we are doing as a studio, as well as getting some new RPG shows going on. Somebody was asking, I think might have been Iffy again, I don't know. Somebody was asking about the break between
Valviper.
Valviper. Okay.
Yes and no. So that's the way to put that answer. One of the things that we've found, and we've talked about this in a few different ways, is that running a break simultaneously where all of the shows end at once, and then it kind of results in a few things. One, we're scrambling to figure out what shows are going to fill in those breaks. 2, we have a sudden dramatic shift in all of the content that we're doing. And it means that our, like, in terms of numbers, like, a lot of things shift and change because not everyone wants to watch those shows, or people are less interested or invested in them.
People use that time to catch up.
For lots of reasons. So
rather than watching the new stuff.
One of the things we want to do is continue shows having breaks because it is important, but likely make it so that the breaks aren't all happening at once or aren't all simultaneous. So there may be some overlap. Maybe we'll have 1 week where all the shows are on break or something like that, but it will be a little bit more staggered so that our breaks kind of, we still have them, so the shows still get some downtime and the GMs still get some downtime and the players
but
do.
Be a little more staggered.
Yeah. So 1, we're not completely coming up with 3 or however many new shows we need all at once. We're coming up with 1 at a time, and once that one gets rolling, then we can start thinking about the next one. So it takes some of the stress and burden off of us too.
The Unspeakable, thank you so much for that donation. I still can't subscribe, so here's my money for your banana fund to feed the minions. Banana.
I guess all I get are banana. Oh,
banana. Potato. Anyway.
I hate minions. I hate all of you.
So yeah, we want to stagger season breaks. The shows should all still get them. And somebody may be sitting there going, but Anna, doesn't that mean you don't get to have breaks? And not if we get a board operator. If we get a board operator, then I can start doing what should be my job as CEO, which is getting 501c3 stuff finalized and finally getting that application done, and going and talking to corporations about possibly partnering with us or funding us. I can start doing the things that a CEO should be doing. Overall, overseeing, but not micromanaging or being super hands-on or anything
or
like that. Like,
being tied to being here all the time. Like,
yeah.
when opportunities arise, you can take them because you aren't beholden to being here. Which isn't to say that maybe there will still be times that, the board operator needs a week off and you fill in, or someone else who knows how to run the board fills in. But if your income is not tied to you being here and you're not the only person who has to be here because you're the only one that can do the job, then that opens up a lot of opportunities for you, and conversely, as a result, the studio is like, what's my connecting word there?
Yep. So that's part of the plan overall.
So in terms of the breaks between 3 and 4, what we'll probably see is a staggered ending for our seasons, and that will result in kind of a staggered start. And a lot of that's going to be based off of how we get started with the potential crowdfunding campaign, and when that starts, what that's going to look like. Because we need that, and that's why I like big picture plans. So there'll be a big calendar. I'm very excited. Gonna make a big calendar, maybe even a whiteboard once going on a wall.
I am super relieved to not be doing the calendar.
There might be post-it notes involved, just so you're warned.
You tell me what we need, I'll get it. All right.
Color-coded post-it notes. That's fine. I have so many. You're fine. You don't need to go.
All right. Spoopy wanted to know if we were planning on expanding into European-friendly time slots. Yes, so much yes. This is something that I have wanted to do from the beginning of the studio. Yes. However, we've got to be able to fund those shows, and that's, again, that comes back to the potential crowdfunding. But like, I very much want, my community is almost entirely Europeans, so I want, when I'm jamming a show, I want it to be when those people can watch. So I'm not entirely sure what that's, how that's going to play out. We're not at that point of actually nailing down how we're going to do that, but that is an incredibly important thing to me personally to do with this studio. Just because, like I said, I have promised my community from the beginning that while running the studio would detract from my personal streams and take away my personal streaming time, I would still be giving them content that they would enjoy. And right now, they can't enjoy that content live because it's too late in the day. And that, to me, feels like I am not properly upholding my end of the deal. So that is personally important to me, as well as it making logical sense.
I think there's also a piece too when you look at a lot of the other studios that are out there making RPG shows are based on the West Coast, which means that there is a, like, when you look at who's producing content when, purely from the analytical side, it's like, wow, there's a lot at this time and less at this time, and so finding those spots that work well. But I think, as you pointed out, like, there's questions about, I see your question, Big Man RPG, and there's another one higher up, about the idea of, like, when do you fit those in, is potentially based on who and what the cast is going to look like as well. And we have some flexibility. There are people whose schedules are open or flexible. Yeah, 3 a.m. Pacific time, that's exactly.
So we've got a couple of donations, but really first, I do want to say, no, having a sub button in no way, shape, or form would make us a for-profit. That has no bearing on our corporate structure at all. If and when we eventually get partnered, which will probably be sometime this fall when viewer rates start to climb overall on Twitch, then we'll get a sub button, and it won't have any bearing on our for-profit or non-profit status.
The subscription money essentially is still a donation at that point, or it's just it's like when you sign up for a regular recurring
might
donation.
Not be.
No?
Because that money is going to Twitch, and then Twitch is paying us. So Twitch would be giving us money, but I think so I don't know if that would be tax deductible for them, but subscriptions would not be tax deductible for you, but we would still get the income from it, and it would still be non-profit on our end. It's just, not tax deductible. That's all. Working on it, Evie. I'm working on it.
They genuinely are. Her and others.
But more CEO stuff fund. Yes, hype. Let's get there together. Thank you very, very much for that $5.55. And
Evelyn Butterfield donated $6. Duh, subbing. Can we get a can't going? Come on, chat. I worked out today already. My legs are tired. They are jelly-like. I did not properly cool down, and then I came into this air-conditioned space, so all my muscles are going to be like, eek! So it'll be fun to watch me ever leave this sofa.
It's about 80 degrees outside, going to be a high of 90 today, and it is 65 degrees in the studio because I cranked the AC up and then left on Monday night. So,
legs.
yeah.
Big Man RPG's question about ending an RPG show without railroading it. A lot of that is, I guess a lot of that's dependent on your goal. The hope is that by the time you're getting to the end of a story, it is through the collaborative experience of role playing, you feel like you come to some sort of conclusion, and then your job is to sort of facilitate the tying of the bows, and the kind of the climax moment, the ending of the conclusion, as opposed to making sure they get to a specific point, because I always try and plan with some sort of long-term goal in mind, and that goal is going to shift over the course of a story that I'm telling, but I'm always working towards something. So once I'm like, oh, now that goal is much closer, that's when I start saying, now it's probably time to wrap up our story. So I can give like the case of Shadowrun, the goal eventually just got to the point of them fighting a dragon. I was like, the goal was they have to stop this organization. Bad things will happen if they don't. And I set up these series of problems of like, you have to do this and you have to fix this. And so once I felt like they were close enough to that, then you create your final challenge. What's the final problem that they're going to face? And I think that's where a lot of the power of like narrative time comes in. If you want to make things happen, sometimes you can stop, like if you're in a system that does have dice rolls, sometimes the best step to do is to step away from rolling dice and to just narrate what happens, to have the players narrate what their characters do, and just sort of be a little less like the player, like, I want to climb up this wall and do this crazy awesome thing, rather than being like, roll and see if it happens. You're like, no, we're at this conclusion. I just want it to happen. That is within your power as the GM to decide that that is not something you're going to make them roll for. And that's one of the strategies that I've used is like, no, this just happens. I'm not going to make anyone roll for it, or I roll to see how well it might happen, but it still happens anyway. And that's something I think that I tried to, like, playing systems where you as the GM don't roll and where things just sort of happen is actually, I think, a really valuable experience. Powered by the Apocalypse systems often do that, and so your job as the GM is to just like set problems and then just be like, no, this happens. And that is a tool that I've tried to take into systems where you still roll as the GM or the players still roll, is that sometimes it's okay to just be like, no, it happens, and not leave that up to chance. I hope that helps a little bit. But if you have more specific questions on endings, are a tricky thing. I have watched many a TV show that have ended poorly.
Yeah. And I think, like, for me, because I love Leviathan just as much as everybody else, but I'm also super excited to see what the next story is. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to see what not just you come up with, but what all the players come up with.
Mm-hmm.
We might end up doing a little bit of cast shuffling, but like, if only to introduce some new people and whatnot. But even so, like, I'm still excited for the stories that the individuals are going to tell, how the relationships between everyone is going to change, and like, and on and on. So. I get excited at the prospect of doing a new show. So yeah,
I do too. And I think endings help when you know when you got there. If you're telling a narrative story as opposed to just a kind of a meandering, more sandboxy one, then an ending will just happen when you are done playing, and that is okay too. But if you're specifically telling a story, having a goal in mind of what's the conclusion of this story, what sort of end state do I want to have? Is it they defeat the villain? It can be simple, it can be complex, but knowing that you're working towards something stops you doing things like a lost ending, or the Stargate SG-1 ending, which I don't like to talk about because it was terrible. Or other shows where you're just sort of like that.
Countless other
How
shows.
I Met Your Mother is another one where I'm like, really? That's what you went with? You just sort of negated everything that you... Okay, well, guess for yourself. Oddly enough, I actually think Buffy season 7 ending was better than some of their other season endings, because they were like, nah, we just raised the stakes as high as we can raise them, and we did the thing, And now the show's over, and I'm like, yeah, no, that's about as high as I want you to raise them.
I've never seen Buffy.
That's fine. They basically were like, we're gonna fight the biggest, baddest evil of all of the big bad evils, and I was like, oh, yeah, no, that's how I want that show to end. And I think it was better than some of their other ones where they're like, they were at the right point. They had made the stakes as high as you could pretty much make them in Buffy, and then they ended it, and I was like, cool. That's where you should end, when you can no longer raise them higher. So yeah, that's kind of they raise the stakes.
No, the stakes, because it's Buffy.
No, oh, he wasn't talking about like beef steak. Like
no,
a
that's
steak
spelled totally differently. Steaks.
For like camping.
Yes. Yes. For camping with vampires. Yes. Oh goodness.
So the so endings are complicated, and they're hard. I think sometimes they're really difficult to do because you often don't want to see something end, which I think helps, like, knowing that new things will be happening is going to make it easier.
Yeah.
But also, I, like, some of it, too, is I'm like, I've asked these cast members to commit to, like, 3 seasons of the show, and I'm like, at some point I need to be like, you can take a break. Like, it's okay. And then, and so that, like, part of it is ending this show gives them an opportunity to be like, I want to take a whole season off. Like, I will be good in January, and then I can run a show and, like, find someone else and not have to, like, be like, no, you're here forever because I need your character. And I think that's also important to be able to do. Giving people opportunities to take breaks is helpful. I feel like there was other
and
questions.
that's something that's important to me for the running of the channel and, like, overall sustainability. I don't want anyone burning out, myself included.
Glad you're saying that.
We're kind of, like, teetering there, but I really don't want anyone at all burning out. And that means that we have to take breaks, and whether it's by ending a long-running show and starting something new and fresh, or by just flat out, like, having somebody take some time off, then we're gonna do what we need to do to take care of our people first. Mm-hmm. That's my plan anyway.
I am very much with you, DM. I think storytelling with an end goal is almost always better than storytelling without one.
Yeah. It'll generate more engagement and interest over time.
I think it also makes more satisfying endings.
Yep.
Kind of that a feeling of an arc. Which also isn't to say that, and this is really important to point out, like, these are some of the differences between running a Twitch show versus doing a home game. Your home game may just be an exploration, like an episode by episode, mission by mission, and kind of living in this sandbox world. That's great. That's awesome. And your ending might just be, we're done playing for now. Let's, like, retire these characters without ever really having to have some sort of conclusion to the story. They defeated the villain. But I find when you're doing something more for a performance, you're tend to find more engagement, more interest when you play something as a story. When you're kind of running an arc and a good story mountain has a rising action, a climax, and falling action. Like, there is a reason why we tell stories with beginning, middles, and ends, because otherwise your story just looks like this, and it might do this sometimes, but you never get that tension and then that release. Character X is only mostly dead. Yeah, no one's ever really dead. That's my feeling about all of the Marvel movies. No one's really dead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's Marvel and DC in general.
Yes.
Speaking of, someday I really want to do a superhero show. However, it would probably be much closer to The Incredibles than Marvel or DC.
That'd be pretty cool.
Right? Just a light, not quite lighthearted, but fairly lighthearted.
More
good-natured.
Golden Age.
Exactly.
Less,
yes. Golden Age.
Gritty
instead of dark and gritty.
Not going Dark Knight, going.
No.
Going old school.
Don't be Batman.
Don't be Batman. That is my main advice for players. Don't be Batman.
Yeah,
Just
well,
don't.
that's what I say.
Yeah. It's a solid
Don't
advice
be Batman.
for players.
Have things you care about. Don't be an orphan. Don't be an orphan. Or if you are, you better darn well have been adopted and love your adopted parents.
It's okay to have story of characters that don't have parents that they know or care about. It's fine. Just don't make it the only
Then they
feature
should
of your
have
character.
siblings that they know and care about, neighbors that they know and care about. They have to care about someone.
Yeah. Yes.
Otherwise, they're boring. It's fine. It's fine. Anyway.
You're not saying you're Batman. You're just saying no one ever saw you in the same room together. Wait a minute.
What system would I use for a superhero show? I don't know yet. It's not... The superhero idea isn't one that I'm imminently... Right? It's freaking cold in here. The superhero one isn't a show that I am currently super into planning right now. I'm kind of trying to focus my personal energies on the Star Trek show, on the off chance that I'm planning any RPG show, and mostly my time right now needs to be spent on getting that Seed and Spark campaign together and keeping everything running in general. Anyway, why must you constantly brainstorm RPGs I want to be in? That's the mark of a good show to me, is when you were watching it, you were sitting there trying to write yourself into the story in some way, shape, or form. You're thinking about what character you would play, what your stats would be. You're making your character in your mind and figuring out what you would do in that if you were a player in the show, or if you could guest, or... Yeah. That, to me, if you were doing that, is the mark of a really good RPG show.
I agree.
Can't they be angsty orphans with great destinies to further empower their Mary Sue fantasies? No.
Could RPGs DM nip?
Yeah.
So like catnip?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
I'm on the nip.
So anyway.
No? Shouldn't.
So yeah, I'm really looking forward to where we take things in year 2. We're really kind of trying to hopefully ramp up to something really like I mean, I basically, when I was talking with you about it, I was calling it essentially a channel relaunch, where we're not going anywhere. We're not leaving Seattle.
No.
We're not getting rid of any cast members that aren't like, oh, hey, I feel like doing this other thing for a little bit, but I'll be back. No. We're staying right here. There's no expansion or anything like that. But
People got a little bit of trauma right now.
yeah, a little bit of trauma. Yeah. But relaunching in terms of we're going to have a lot of new shows. We're going to bring on more people onto the staff and really start getting things humming, hopefully.
Yeah, I think the hope is to end up in a place where it feels a little bit more like a channel, with kind of more diversity of the content and looking at the whole thing across the board and what does our schedule look like and what does it feel like and how are we pitching our shows, and
a more fully fleshed out studio than just like me trying to hold things together while we run a couple of RPG shows. But yeah, like staff and a programming lineup instead of a series of dots for the line. Yeah.
One of my favorite things that Claudia tries to do.
So yeah, we'll see.
Reaching out and expanding the community too, I think, or not this, but like the people who are working here and bringing in new people.
Yes. Yeah. And that's, like, right now we can only bring in so many people because we only have so many shows.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got kind of a list. We were talking about this very briefly before this show. We have kind of a list of people to reach out to and be like, hey, you want to maybe do something? We talked about this on your stream yesterday, the possibility of a baking show. How I already know who's going to be the cast for a baking show. I already know that. But we just can't do that show right now. So it's kind of, if we're able to run this campaign successfully, then we'll be able to grow into a much more fully fledged studio with a much more fully fledged lineup of shows and so on and so on and so on.
The Great Emerald Bake Off. I like that. Except it would probably be less competitive.
Oh yeah. No, I would still love, like, for a special event, I still want to get Joe up here and basically do the Great British Bake Off, but apparently the Great Emerald Bake Off. And have probably you and Joe, maybe Joe and Strix, or I don't know, somebody appropriately. Oh, I don't even know the word. But
as the judges?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, as judges.
I feel like you could do like
and then
Joe
have
and Tara.
like other cast members.
Yeah. Having to.
Oh yeah. That
Joe
would
and
work.
Tara.
Absolutely.
She could totally
Yep.
pull off nice or mean
Yep.
judge, whichever you need her to be.
Yeah. Well, Joe would be mean.
That's
I think,
what we
I think
assume,
yeah.
but just in case he's like, no, I want to be really nice.
Yeah.
Two sassy
It's
judges,
possible.
and then the rest of the cast. We could do. Oh man, we could do like show versus show. Like pit EPK and Leviathan against each other. That might get really complicated. Or pair people up. I liked having teams.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I like the idea of teams, but anyway, I want to be on the baking show too. I know, right?
There were a list of games to be
Now-
familiar with.
Sorry, real quick.
Yeah,
DM.
yeah.
Now imagine you're me, and you were the final say for whether or not you were on that show.
That's rough.
Sorry, go ahead and answer your question.
No, I was gonna say, a list of games to be familiar with for well-rounded GM. So, my biggest recommendation is less are there specific games that you should play, and more give yourself opportunities to try new systems. There are so many games out there. One of the there's like D&D is the big name, and I would focus on looking at a system and being like, rather than going from maybe Dungeons and Dragons to a different D20 system, see what it feels like to play in a system that doesn't use a D20. Like, what is it like to play in a completely different system? So that you can kind of get the experience of something that is vastly different. Because I think that's the best way to figure out what you actually enjoy. And that's where you can kind of pick and choose some of the advice that they have in there of like, oh, you should do this. And like, here's how the GM works in this system. As kind of a short list, I definitely recommend looking at any of the Powered by the Apocalypse systems. Apocalypse World being the first one. But all of those systems kind of run off of the same basic principle. The GM doesn't roll anything. The players all have these playbooks with moves in them that allow them to do certain things, and the number of stats are pretty minimal. Eat, Pray, Kill is an example of one of those. So that'd be one place I'd look. Blades in the Dark is a system that I've heard really great things about from looking at it. I think it's got some really interesting mechanics. It's sort of a similar concept of a little bit more rules light. I also think those are probably two big ones to look at. If you want something similar to D&D, but one with a different feel, Fantasy Age is a really good one. It's 3d6, GURPS is similar, and Fate would probably be another one that I'd look at. But just picking them up and giving it a try. A lot of them come with really easy modules. A lot of them are really quick and easy to pick up and play too. And then you can, and it's okay to not like them, but you'll get some experience of like, oh, this is what I didn't like about them. And so like now I can come back to D&D and be like, these are the things I don't like about D&D.
Yeah.
And so these are the things that I either hand wave or work around because I don't like them. But now I know because I know what I do like. And yes, crossover episode.
We'll see.
We will see.
I only agreed to it as a potential winter holiday event. So we have plenty of time to figure that one out. Played a lot of Parpa, but not a lot of other stuff. Like, I haven't played D&D much. I would say, depending on where your much is for D&D, check out 5th edition. 5th edition is the best. I've played nearly all of the versions of Dungeons and Dragons, and 5th is probably the best. So
I've really enjoyed 5th. I think it is a solid system. There are other D20 systems that run off of the similar concepts. Yeah, I think that's a good one. If you like things like Powered by the Apocalypse, I would say Fantasy Age might give you a similar sort of D&D feel, but it doesn't run quite the same way as D&D. It's also got like character building is a lot simpler. They only have 3 classes. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. A lot of it's also, do you have a specific concept you want to run? Because there are a lot of systems that are built around like superheroes or fantasy or science fiction, and going in for systems that are less generic can kind of give you some interesting ideas of what it looks like. Because a lot of the time when you build a specific system as opposed to a generic one, you think about some more specific scenarios that a player would encounter. Like Stars Without Number is specific to space, and it's built around like there's spaceships in it and space weapons and travel, and like what does that look like, as opposed to a generic system that wouldn't necessarily cover those things.
Yeah, and that was something for a while. I was looking at building basically a plug and play system where you've got a core system that is the most basic of rules, and then things that you can add on to it, that you can tack onto it, and will add only the rules that you need. You've got the basic rules, and then you've got a magic system or a high-tech system. But all of the game developers that I talked to about it were like, yeah, you don't want to do that. And I was like, why not? Because you're far better off having a repertoire of specialized systems, because those individual systems that are designed specifically for what you want to do are going to be far better than any universal system you could possibly make.
Yeah, that's a similar...
And have a lower barrier of entry, too.
I had a very similar thought process. Because, like, GURPS kind of falls into that category. That is what it is designed for. It is intended to be a generic, modular system. And I actually had the exact same thought at you at one point. And I was like, no, I need to make something more specific. And I think that's part of why, that's, I think, part of the popularity of systems like Powered by the Apocalypse or Blades, where they do, at their core, have a relatively simple core mechanic, but people hack them to the point that it's like you're creating a new specific way to play this game as opposed to playing an entirely new game or doing that sort of modular plug and play. And I think that's a lot of where indie RPGs are kind of sitting right now. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Trooper normally would talk about GURPS. I actually genuinely feel like I should play it at some point because I've heard a lot about it, and I don't know. It's also a 3d6 system, which is kind of a nice, smooth curve. It's a lot easier, and it's one of those roll low. I'm like, okay, I could try this.
You want to roll low, is what you're...
Yeah, so you're
that.
It's always an interesting one when you want to roll low. Yeah, it's a system where you have your stat and you want to hit the stat or lower, I believe, in order to succeed. It's like tri-stat.
Star Trek Adventures is a roll low system too, and I'm like, ugh.
It does help with DC creep, rolling low. That is the main thing. It's because in D&D it's really easy to just be like, the door is suddenly a DC 15 when it used to be a DC 10, but it's not actually 5 harder than it used to be. It's just like you sort of do this creep with the numbers to kind of keep the challenge harder, as opposed to making something actually harder.
DM, yes.
Do you think it'd be another Mana Speak? Yes.
Yes.
I just read their most recent Kickstarter update, and they're not quite ready to play test the next one. I'm gonna reach out to her again and be like, how not quite ready is not quite ready? Because I want to play it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's So, we talked about going to Geek Girl Con, and we're not entirely sure how much space we're going to have or like what exactly kind of content we're going to have at Geek Girl Con, but I know one thing. We will have a TV, and it will be playing A Manner of Speaking while we are there.
Good. I'm glad that's the one that'll be playing.
Yes. Darn right.
Iffy, thank you for asking me to slow down that. DC creep. So one of the things you do in Dungeons & Dragons is players roll against a static number, and that static number is referred to as the DC, the difficulty challenge. How hard is this challenge to complete? And they normally give you kind of a recommended table from easy to hard for how easy or difficult something is. 10 is typically your kind of easiest challenge that you should get someone to roll for, because on a flat D20 you have a 50-50 chance of succeeding. And then it kind of generally goes up by 5, but it can be kind of variable. I remember I actually had to relearn a lot in 5th edition, because in 4th edition they gave you new DCs based on the level of the character. And that's part of why the DC would creep. And so in 5th edition, it's just a static. It's like 10 is always your easy, 15 is this, and then 20 and so on. But one of the things that it's really easy to do as a GM is be like, well, now my players are 10th level, so I still want this, is to change. It's really easy to make those numbers change based on the level of your character. Rather than saying easy is always 10, you're like, well, they're level 10 now, so easy is actually 20. And it's because they're so much more likely to get an easy challenge and succeed. So rather than putting a harder challenge in front of them, you just make the number higher. And that's a really easy thing to do. And that's generally referred to as DC creep. It's that idea that you slowly start pushing up that difficulty challenge artificially, as opposed to actually presenting them with harder challenges.
To cover not this show, not that show, not this show, yes, also those shows. We're going to talk to the new editor and get basically a promo roll going on, or a promo reel. That we'll be able to show that'll highlight some aspects of all of them. But depending on how much space we have, how many TVs we could have there, we might have the entirety of A Manner of Speaking going while also having a promo reel, or doing breaks with the promo reel that highlights other shows or whatever. Like, yes, the other amazing stuff too, obviously. Maybe not obviously if you're asking, but yes, we will. All the things. Yes, all the things. Magpie was asking about Stars Without Number.
Yeah, I saw that. Just to finish up, so the DC in D&D is the number set by the GM, and then the player rolls to exceed that number, and they roll a D20 plus their modifiers for it. And so the difference between DC creep versus higher challenges is basically you're like, it's still a locked door, but now this door is for some reason harder, as opposed to actually making it harder. And so that's one of the things you run into when you have a system where you're trying to roll a low number, and that number is based on the character's stats. I have much less control over how hard or easy something is. So that's a thing. Stars Without Number at its core is a very simple mechanic, especially if you're familiar with any other D20 systems. It is a roll a D20, add your modifiers for combat, or roll 2D6, add your modifiers. One of the things I really like is in that system is that your stats and your skills are not linked. So I can ask a player on one roll to do a wisdom and notice, and I can ask them on another roll to do an intelligence and notice, because I think that a stat is more relevant, or players can give me arguments for why they should be able to use this one versus this one because they're doing X, Y, and Z. And I love that flexibility. That's something that's that's the thing that I really look for in RPG systems, and it's probably something that if I start running D&D more often, I want to find a better way to take out D&D's artificial locking. Because it isn't technically required, it's just that the way that most character sheets are built is that it makes it very hard to not automatically do that. Because when you put it on your character sheet, you automatically add those two modifiers together, so you just have one number rather than splitting it. It does, downside, gives you slightly more mental math, and that's one thing that is not my favorite part about a lot of systems. Because I think mental math slows down games a lot.
That's fair.
And that's more, I think, a show thing than necessarily a home game.
Yeah.
But the more numbers you have to add, the slower your result of finding the result of your roll is going to be.
Yeah, I think that probably carries true for home games a fair amount as well, because you want to minimize the yeah.
And it's not even whether or not people are good or bad at it. It's just that you're like, okay, you're going to roll 2. So, like, instead of that number, you roll 2d6 plus a skill plus a this. So that's 4 numbers that I have to add together. And so even if it's like a 4, 6, 3, and a 1, like 14. Like, that still took me time. Like, I have to...
This is why Critical Role started saying I rolled a nat 18 plus stuff. Because that 18 is usually enough for him to know they're getting at least +2, so they hit the 20 DC.
Yeah.
Move on, and it speeds stuff up for them a lot.
And I will say stuff like Roll20 can really help with that, because a lot of the time, like when you're using those systems, so one of the things that I think would be great is, I don't know what their like integration for like character sheets are, but it is potentially a tool if you have people who are like, I struggle with mental math, just be like, have a digital character sheet and then click the button to roll it. That is also a totally reasonable thing for people to do in a home game. Like, if I had someone who was ever on one of my shows who was like, if they had some sort of math thing where, like, they had any math paralysis or, like, it stressed them out, I'd just be like, let's just put your character sheet digitally and have it do all of the math for you.
Yep.
Which is why I don't think blanket no screens at the table is a good rule to have.
Yeah.
It's personal. The High School Royale dice system is very interesting. It's very weird from a player end. So you're rolling a dice pool, which I actually kind of always like dice pools as opposed to...
I really like rolling piles of dice.
Yeah, there's something kind of satisfying about it. Anything
more... And it isn't necessarily great for shows because you have to sit there and add it all up, but there's something satisfying about rolling a pile of dice.
Sorry, if I'm talking too fast, tell me to slow down. I'm not necessarily on a linear track today. But no, I totally agree with you. Like, there's a certain point where you're like, this is too many dice. Hit my hand anymore. Yeah. But in High School Royale, you roll a dice pool, and then you're looking for pairs or the highest number. So if you get like two twos, that's a sum of 4. But if you roll a 6, then the 6 would be the higher, so you would take the 6. But if you rolled 2 3s and got a 6, then and didn't roll anything higher than that, then you'd still take that 6. But if you got 2 4s, that would be your 8 versus like a 6. So it's interesting. So it's really hard to get above a 6, but it's pretty easy to get a 6 with just like your easy roll. It was a little odd. 30 dice is that point. 29 is not enough dice. Huh. Well, you can get like the pack of 36, so anything more than 36 dice is too many, because then you need more than one little container. Yeah, that's too many dice.
Piles of dice. Time for a new Shadowrun show?
Yeah. Maybe not Shadowrun. Maybe Cyberpunk.
Like, I mean, yeah, Shadowrun, like, I love Shadowrun. I do. But it's a messy system.
Yeah,
just to do a show out of. It's a messy system to do a show out of.
I did see, and I got kind of excited, and I need to read more about it, is someone did make a Shadowrun Blades in the Dark hack. And I'm like, that could actually work really well as a way to play Shadowrun without playing Shadowrun. Shit. That was basically my thought process.
Yeah.
Magpie Mirror, so the other thing about Stars Without Number is the lethality is a big thing. If you would like, Mangleport suggests one of the basic hacks that a lot of people have done is just saying Emerald rolls max. I also wrote up, and they're over on my Patreon, just the hacks that I made, the homebrews that I made for our game of it, and I did a lot of things to make it less lethal, and I also did a few things to make it feel a little bit more heroic. So if you're interested in either of those things, they're up for free, so you can go grab those. But the biggest thing that I did for hit points is I basically stole what D&D does. And I gave people hit die for their levels. And then I also had them add their level in and not just their constitution modifier, because most people's con modifier is 0. So I was like, you know what? You're going to get minimum your level points a turn. And that system kind of maxes out around level 10 anyway, so I'm like, it's not going to throw them off too much. Plus, it means I can hit them harder. Suddenly, shooting a 12 on a d12 isn't as terrifying. It's like, oh, well, I murdered a player.
Oops.
Yeah, you had one hit. I think the first game is the first, like, practice session we did when one of them rolled up their character, they had 1 hit point. And I was like, no, we need to fix this. I am not playing a game where a character has 1 hit point. I would like to be able to hit you minimum once. That was basically my baseline. I was like, at like level 1, I would like to be able to hit every character once with a reasonable roll and them not die. They might die after 2 hits, but not after 1.
Karma in the dark.
So that's actually pretty great.
Yeah.
I think the Shadowrun one might have been Karma in the Dark. I was looking. I went and just like went onto their page with all their hacks, and I got very excited because there were some cool sounding ones. Yeah.
So maybe a cyberpunk thing in the future.
That is definitely a.
I mean, definitely eventually, but relative near future potentially. Yeah. I don't know. I don't have a lot to say about this stuff. This is your knowledge base. I'm just trying.
No. You're doing great. I have not talked too much about probability curves and dice here. Good. I have somewhere in that notebook a bunch of probabilities that I was writing out. Turns out they're real complicated once you get past a certain number of dice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like cyberpunk. It's a thing, but for me, one of the things I'd want to explore in cyberpunk is something more optimistic than Shadowrun is. I think Shadowrun presents a world where you often are supposed to feel like the players can't really do anything to change the world, and the world just sucks. Like, it's shitty, and it's gonna keep being shitty, so your job is to survive the shittiness. And that's less interesting to me. I would want to explore something that's a little bit more like, it's shitty, and what are you going to do to fix it, even if it's only on a small scale?
I feel like that is the overall tone of the studio that we want to have, is we don't want depressing games. We want uplifting and empowering.
Yeah, I think cyberpunk is a thing that's coming back into fashion, I should say, like with more video games that are coming out in kind of those veins. I also find I don't know if it has a different name, but it's that sort of side of the cyberpunk genre that's a little cleaner, like, and I mean clean in the sense of like everything's a bit shinier and it's more about kind of the technology, and less about like like everyone lives in slums and everything's awful.
Yeah.
Like the sort of Detroit Being Human kind of, everything's just a little bit shinier, but it's still shitty. It looks less like a rave, I think, is the genre of cyberpunk I'm trying to describe. It looks less like a rave. I don't know if that's a version of cyberpunk or not. Like, it's just a different aesthetic. It's still it's still the cyberpunk, but it looks less. It's less neon and less dark trench coaty and.
Okay, so the things that you were saying are conflicting with each other in my head.
It's fine.
Looks less like a rave is the opposite of, because when I think of a rave, I'm thinking of lots of neon and shininess and.
Oh, I guess I have I see in my mind, like the rave is, it gets dark and then there are like the bright lights, but it's Cupertino punk is actually probably what I'm referencing for. It's like the cyberpunk version of Apple. Like everything's just like very clean and made of glass, but also there's like that edge to the society. I don't know. I'm thinking of video games though. Like, not everyone wears black. I want shiny chrome and less EL wire. Yeah.
Shiny chrome, less matrix.
Yeah. It's the update. Yeah, it's less, things look a little less like everyone's wearing a black trench coat and like leather, and people are wearing jeans and t-shirts. I don't have a good description for this, but I'm going to work on it.
A dystopian society, you've got the people living in utopia, and they are very, very few. And then you've got people kind of living just adjacent to it who think that they're living in utopia, who are like, but they're super massively in debt and like can't really leave their jobs. Those are basically the wage slaves in Shadowrun. And so they're kind of living in that utopia, or in Hunger Games, the people living in the capital. You've got the people who are really in charge, who have that huge amount of money and really have the control. You've got the people around them who are kind of like, think that they've got control. They've got the illusion of control and agency and things like that, and are still living in that world of shininess and chrome and lights. And then you've got everybody outside of that who are in the horror scenario. To me, that's dystopia, and what you were talking about is living in that area, but being cognizant that you're in the capital of Hunger Games and working against the establishment to try and fix it. And
I think I also am thinking very much like the pure aesthetic side as opposed to the like dystopian or political elements of it, because I think there is some and also, yes, I'm pretty sure you just describe America.
I don't know what you're talking about. That's not at all. America. Like, that's not at all what I was, because, I mean, no politics. Hey, Be Right UK, thank you so much for that donation. Can't wait for the future you're working on. Aww.
Thank you. I am also, like, I do think a lot in the aesthetic, and I think one of my focus in the way that I'm thinking of cyberpunk is a little bit less of, like, what sort of political climate do we have, because I agree with that. I think it is very much you have those bands. I would want to, because I think a lot of people fall into the I mean, that is functionally what our society looks like in a lot of ways anyway, so it's playing around with some of that, but a lot of it's just purely the aesthetic side. Like, it's less like someone walked out of the Matrix in their black trench coat and their like EL wire, and more more of a modern aesthetic in terms of what does cyberpunk visually look like, as opposed to what is the concept of the story. And that's, I think, where I'm talking about.
Not that either of us have spent any time thinking about this at all.
No. So I want a world run by Apple, not Amazon. No, it's just shiny. I think it's taking the 80s out of the future. It's figuring out what the aesthetic would look like, because I think the visuals are important, because I think some of the way you perceive the visual elements of that cyberpunk world can influence your thinking behind it. And I also like some of those, especially that sort of sci-fi trope where you have that beautiful utopian society where everything is clean and white and bright colors and well manicured, and then you have on the flip side like the person who's working in their house who has no rights, and like you sort of you kind of gloss over a lot of those things because you present these very beautiful worlds, that like classic sci-fi trope of like the beautiful place up in space and then like the trash planet where they throw everyone. So I have never seen Black Mirror because it will mess me up. Like Aeon Flux, some of the visuals which I think are really interesting. Some of the video games, like I really liked a lot of Remember Me's visuals. I think they did a really cool thing in that game of being like, we are in Paris and it is old buildings, but also what happens when you layer like augmented reality and high technology on these kind of classic structures, and that was really cool.
Yeah.
So playing around with some of those things of what can your world like when it is still cyberpunk, as opposed to the Shadowrun aesthetic that I think is very sort of integrated.
I think Appleseed, talking about that, that could make it amazing.
I need to watch that.
You haven't seen it?
I have not seen
I will
Appleseed.
loan it to you.
Okay.
Because that was one of the movies one of the few movies I still have a physical DVD copy of. I will loan that to you.
Nice.
It's good. And I could very much see an RPG in that sort of a world. At least a season or two of an RPG, and it would be really, really.
It's
good.
a sci-fi trope that is done. It's definitely a trope, but I think it's a really interesting one. That kind of the polished, clean dystopia. I think cyberpunk is often dystopia, but it's a dystopia in the way cyberpunk, I think, is partially in the way technology is integrated in our lives. So whether or not it would be pure cyberpunk, I don't know.
Yeah.
I need to learn more about the genre, but maybe it doesn't really matter. It probably only matters for marketing, so I can leave that to Marcus.
Yeah. Yes and no.
Fine.
Just because, like, yeah, because you know, you've been a GM on Twitch long enough, you'll get crap for it.
Yeah.
If you use the wrong word.
Yeah, it isn't cyberpunk.
You'll get told it a lot. So will the rest of us. Also for overlays, maybe.
Yeah, but I can describe the visual feelings of it in the sense without having to give you like a defined genre. Like, that's fine. I can do that. Yeah.
Next question.
Now I've talked about. No, I'm totally not planning cyberpunk.
No.
Why would I do that?
No. And we get back to once more the fact that I want to be on all the shows. It's fine. It's fine.
I do agree. Decompression after shows, I think, is important. I think also setting up some sort of dystopian setting, I would want to be very careful in the setup of that show, of sort of deciding where our dystopia is, because you can kind of go a few different routes. Like, you can do the Shadowrun, like, you know, are we going to be dealing with issues of gender and sexuality and race, or are those not dystopia? Is it about technology? Like, where are our lines of discrimination? Do we want to focus more on the socioeconomics, the power, and those things? Like, what is is slavery going to be a concept we have? Is that something we're going to avoid? And so I think a lot of that sort of show, the more real world things that you're dealing with in a show, the more you need to have some important conversations with your players before you even sit down at a table, and find out what sort of world they want to have. If he wants to know if you're gonna have lots of lens flare in your Star Trek show.
I don't know. I don't think there really was any lens flare in Star Trek.
Not in the original, not in the actual shows.
Yeah.
Just this movie.
Yeah. What movie?
Never mind. Gonna be a lot of
you mean
Rick Rack?
Generations or Contact, or
You're gonna have a lot of Rick Rack on the sleeves. No.
Only the dress uniforms.
Only the dress uniforms.
Veto lens flares. Can you imagine in the studio we just start having lens flares?
You just have a permanent lens flare picture that you just sort of like
move around
on the screen.
Copy and paste.
Iffy, that's going to be part of the overlay design.
Oh,
lens flare.
Lens flare. Yeah, that's the only visual cue I'm giving you for the aesthetic of the show. Lens flare.
Yes.
It's what I want the background to be. Lens flare.
Awesome, Jer. I'm really glad you guys are going to have a whole session discussing expectations. It's genuinely, I think it is a really important thing to do. And honestly, even if the conversation ends up being very short and very simple, it's still important to have that conversation so that everyone's on the same page. What if it was an Office Space RPG? Would you be okay with more lens?
More flare, because flare, you don't have enough pieces of flare.
That's what is this? A TGI Fridays RPG?
Have you not seen Office Space
I have,
either?
but it was a long time ago.
One of the characters that's working at the crappy restaurant.
That's right. Yes.
She didn't have enough flare on her uniform.
That's right.
She only had the minimum. Do you really want to be a person who only does the minimum?
That's right. So I did at one point it was with Nerdprov. We did like a one-shot episode of a improv show that was basically Office space. It was The Office, but set in space.
Mm.
Like, what would the HR look like on a spaceship? What happens when you are the people working the shitty jobs?
That sounds hilarious.
Yeah. It was
Hey,
pretty
Arden.
fun. Lens flares with PNGs. Yeah, transparent background lens flares. If they weren't actually lens flares, they probably wouldn't bother people. They would just give the effect.
So anyway. Yes.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
I like this plan.
Yeah.
We're gonna upgrade
We'll
our
see.
visual effects. That's coming for season 5.
Actually, upgrading the cameras is a really, really important thing to me right now. Like, such that I've contemplated spending my own money to do so. And that's when it's like, yeah, we really need to do that. And not with my money.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's one thing to be temporarily lending a camera to the studio. It's
Yeah.
another thing to actually buy them.
Yeah. On my pack.
Yeah.
So yeah, that right now, one of the things that I hauled into work, those of you that saw my Twitter story earlier today, hashtag Anna versus door. Or no, was it Anna versus door? Yeah, Anna versus door. New lights. I brought in new lights. I don't think that I'll have time to set them up before Leviathan, but I can get started on working out the logistics for it and maybe get them done before Eat, Pray, Kill. But new lights come before new cameras, because otherwise you guys would see how poor the lighting is in here right now. But with those cameras, it compensates for it. So, yeah. Anyway. I'm excited for the Star Trek show. Is it planned as a regular season show, or is it a season break show, or undecided as of yet? I am planning, once I have the time to do this show, I am planning on it being a regular season show. But that said, I was planning on doing a D&D show, so plans change, especially when they involve me needing to do something versus somebody else needing to do it. Because I'm just so busy keeping everything else up and running, and that, more than anything, is what needs to be alleviated potentially by the crowdfunding campaign. So we'll see how that goes. But that's, yeah, there you go. No lens flares, it's like no capes, but makes more stylistic sense. That's fair, yeah.
Capes are dangerous. No capes.
Unless you're invulnerable. If I'm invulnerable, I get to have a cape. It's like a status symbol thing.
Fair.
I'll be honest.
Fair.
If I'm invulnerable, that cape, it's not going to be a problem.
I guess you're not wrong. What if your only vulnerability was capes?
Well, then you
wouldn't
don't
be.
want a cape. And you'd be a terrible hero, because you'd always be fighting villains wearing capes. No, not the cape, my only kryptonite. Is the Amazon wish list up to date? Yes. Yes, it is. I think I even put in a few priorities in there. But an infrared camera means she has to hide her other 100 arms she uses to do all the things. It's not like I actually have 100 physical arms. It's like, Mage Hand and Unseen Servant and stuff like that. Totally a bard.
Is that how you got in today? No, yeah, I guess you had to use your levels in Rogue, not your mage hand.
No comment. I deliberately didn't say how I got in because I don't want to tell people how to break into my building.
No. I'm not saying you should say
no,
it,
I
but,
know.
I'm surprised that you, I guess you maybe could have just done it as a bard. I just assumed you, sweet talked your way in.
There's nobody to talk to. I'm going to sweet talk the door.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing?
It might work. What if it was a sentient door?
It's a nice grate you got going on. It's pretty great.
Oh.
Yeah, right? Nat 20. Yes! You have successfully seduced the door.
The door blushes and squeaks open.
Yeah.
What if it were a mimic?
Oh, goodness.
All good questions.
I assumed you went and got your key. Of course not.
Maybe you did with, mage hand.
It doesn't have that great of a range.
No, that's fair.
No, I ninja'd my way in. I broke my way. I broke into the building.
I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you.
Thanks, in my level of rogue. No, I was carrying way too much stuff to go back to my apartment. Anyway. This is why this show's going on hiatus. As much as I enjoy hanging out on the couch, it's turned into wind down without the wine. And frankly, if we're going to do that, we should just have wine.
That's also very true.
So,
Doors.
roll seduction. Yeah. I keep going to drink more water. What? I love this show. So do I. And that's why it's going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be a little bit because, we're not currently planning a show, and I need to spend my time focusing on first the Seed and Spark campaign. Why did it have to be 2 S's?
Seed and Spark?
I'm just really hearing my lisp today.
Oh.
Anyway, the crowdfunding campaign. And then after that, I'm going to have to ramp up Geek Girl Con prep. So, if the crowdfunding campaign goes well, then I will have help for Geek Girl Con and help running the board and help doing all of these things. So we will be able to still add in the Star Trek show and bring this show back and things like that. But in the meantime, we're going to try and get some other content going on instead, and we'll see how it all works out. Right. Once Pastrice's glorious ascension got delayed. Yes. Yeah, and I do want to, for example, I do still want to build that world. I think that someday we're going to do a D&D show, and it will be wonderful to put it in that world and whatnot. It's just right now not the direction that we necessarily want to head, because we've got another D&D show going on, and then we've got ideas for another fantasy show, and things that don't necessarily involve me GMing. So Pastrice remains in our hearts.
It's all the cholesterol in the butter. And the not butter.
Right, the battle pumpkin? It's cruel. It's
It
cruel.
is. It's like dyslexia. It's not an easy word to spell.
No, it's really not.
Haha! DM. That's what I'm here for. Ruining sentience. Sentience. Yes, sentience. And sentiments. And sediment.
Sapiens?
And sapience.
Sediment.
And sentimentality.
Oh, goodness. Yes, Pastrice will always have a warm place in our arteries. So any more
Comments,
questions?
concerns, consensual knob turnings. Really?
Right. So,
Maybe that's where we wrap.
we're going to be back in a few hours for Leviathan.
Yes,
Distant
indeedy.
Stars. It might be a little bit of a short episode, but not a lot. We're just planning on ending in time for us to go and possibly see some fireworks.
Yes, because fireworks happen pretty late because it is late at night. Main thought for you, Magpie, would be focusing when you're describing on one or two distinctive traits. You don't necessarily need to describe everything about a person. Depending on how long they're going to be there. One or two things that distinguish them. And then the motivations or personalities, I kind of go with personalities. I either base it off of maybe someone I know or just someone we haven't seen in a while. I kind of try and conflict with what's contrast with something that's happened. And then one of the other things for motivations, I typically go with some of the very simple, do they want to help? Do they not want to help? That's a solid line to be are they going to be helpful or are they going to be sort of obstinate? And then just decide what's their line. Their thing is I am a business person. I need to make money. So they're kind of just like a one-sentence thought. But I always kind of, when they're interacting with the party, I always just kind of go with basically, like, are they going to be helpful or not helpful? And then I flesh them out from there. And then you have more about yeah.
Ifrithiel, is Lizzie back? She should be, yes. Yes.
The plan.
I just checked to see if there was any new
Not
updates
have
in Discord.
Sarah tonight, though.
Should be. Darn it.
Yeah, but I knew that one.
No, you did, and I had just forgotten.
Yeah.
But no, that's good because it means I don't have to set up the table to have 3 people
Yeah.
on it, which is always a
We're
pain.
still at 4 tonight.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. No Thea tonight.
He is probably stealing something.
Probably. Possibly from friends.
Yeah, hard to say.
Who knows?
What is a
Who
friend?
knows?
But someone you can steal from without getting in trouble.
Can there be a wig on the desk instead? We can just put the tall one.
Yeah.
Just set it on the table. It'll be fine. Hey, Cool Critter Tee. Thanks. This was the first T-shirt they ever did. And now you all know why I wore it today, because this is the last episode of Behind the Screens for a while. It will be back, but for a while. So it felt, when I thought about what I was going to wear today, I'm like, yeah, that's a good shirt to wear. So, there you go. It did, the Saltiest Stealer, it did. Except for Smalls. It's a long story. Anyway,
Potato sack smalls.
you have a mannequin, put a wig on it. That's true.
I gotta go pick up my wig anyway.
Potato sack Smalls. So, to do a really quick recap, this show is going on break for a while.
The Battle Pumpkin, thank you for the $5 donation.
Thank you. We are planning a crowdfunding campaign on a website called Seed and Spark, which is specifically designed for independent video creators and online content like what we do. It's a great site. Looking forward to it. Gotta spend lots of time working on that. And then Lauren has come on to do scheduling for us, thankfully.
Programming Princess.
Yes. And what else? We will be at Geek Girl Con.
Season 4, that's one. Year 2, we'll be kicking off around as part of the Seed and Spark.
Yep.
With our show lineup, which may include current and new and old.
Yeah.
That's currently where we're at with the lineup.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But we've got a lot of big things planned, and we're really excited to reveal them and bring them to you over time, including in potentially... Oh, shit.
Always happens. Hi, Phoebe!
Pumpkinberry, turn back! Turn back!
We're signing off.
No!
Oh, no. Happens. It happens.
Pumpkinberry, so wonderful. So wonderful. Look at all that love. Look at all that
The
love.
love is real.
It really is. Especially in
Love
her
is
chat.
real.
Pumpkinberry is wonderful. If you all are not following Pumpkinberry, you really, really should be. She is a sweetheart. Pumpkinberry here is one of the wonderful, wonderful people that was on The Right Clique.
I miss them.
Yep. Me too. Me too. I really
think-
want to do an all in-person episode.
I'm
sometime.
gonna get to meet at least one of them in person. I mean, I met one of them in person already.
Tad is here. Yes, Tad is here.
Tad!
Thank you so much for coming by, but we are wrapping up, Pumpkinberry. I mean, now we're going to stay live for the next 4 minutes, but...
Yeah.
Tad is here.
Tad is here.
Thank you so much for coming by, Pumpkinberry. Really, really appreciate it. Do you want to do the spiel for what we are better than I do?
I
'cause
can
you're
do
more
that.
used
I
to it.
do it a lot. Hi, everybody. Welcome, Raiders. Thank you so much for coming in. If you haven't been here before, we are a nonprofit broadcasting studio based in the Seattle area. We run a lot of RPGs, and we do some other content as well. This show is one of the other contents, but we are just wrapping up. And we were just kind of doing a summary of the state of the studio /
Plans for
plans
the future.
for the future. Thank you. I don't know where that sentence was going. But we are a nonprofit broadcasting studio with our mission to promote and improve diversity in gaming and geek spaces. And so PB was on one of our shows called The Right Click or Right Clique. They were a group of performers who specialized in glitter and panties. That's the best way of describing them. I will be GMing a show later on tonight called Leviathan Distant Stars. It is a space opera RPG in 3 hours. It starts at 7 p.m. Pacific time, so feel free to come back then. We also have a show on Friday nights called Eat, Pray, Kill. It is based off of the comic book Kill 6 Billion Demons. And on Monday nights, we have a Dungeons & Dragons show called Aloft. It is a different setting for Dungeons & Dragons. It is essentially
Post-apocalyptic future with airships.
Yep.
And magic.
And magic.
Yeah.
Best dumpster fire Ren Fair band on the internet. That is, in fact, what the right click were.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, thank you so much for coming in, Raiders. Thank you for being here. We run the show from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Pacific time, but it is going on a break for a while while we gear up for our next season of shows. So hit that follow button so you can get notifications when we're live. And if you're like, we really like RPGs, I would also recommend setting it to putting that little bell on so you can get push notifications.
Panty Goblin, thank you so much for that donation. Panty Goblin says, you should...
I believe I need to do this as Boss Man. Boss Man, thank you for rating, Ted. Also, thanks for these great goblin hats and for the new gig as manager. Right-click love. I'm Boss Man.
Oh, goodness, and now we have an EJ and Lizzie, so we're wrapping up.
Are you broadcasting?
Yes. I know, I forgot to put the light on.
Anna!
Oh, goodness.
I think we read... Oh, there was another one. No, we did read the one from the Battle Pumpkin. I did read it.
Yeah, but there was no text. Yeah, no message. So, we did read that one. We just didn't have. So there you go. There you go. So yeah, we ran down the shows. Yeah, we talked about how we're planning a Star Trek show eventually.
That's the thing that'll be happening.
That is, I'll be honest, the entire goal of the Star Trek show is getting Pumpkinberry to come and visit. It's true. That is the entire reason that I'm creating a Star Trek show. That and my undying love for Star Trek. But that's beside the point. That's just a
much
small, yeah, much smaller. Yeah. All right. Thank you all so much, so much for hanging out, watching, for the donations today, for the new follows. Pumpkinberry, thank you so much for rating. I'm sorry that we've got bad timing because we're wrapping up. We gotta go and go somewhere warmer, I think.
I'm gonna get myself some lunch.
You're wonderful. Thank you very, very much. And we will see you back in 3 hours for Leviathan Distant Stars. Yeah? Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Lizzie!
Hi.
Sorry, I often don't bother with that thing for this because nobody shows up this early.
I was paranoid about parking.
Apparently the mic.